Simeon, it is a great pleasure to join you all for the 5th European Union Arab Forum, and greetings from our CNN regional hub here in Abu Dhabi, where I have witnessed firsthand the development of relations between the two blocs, but specifically between Greece and the UAE that started in business but is growing into a strategic alliance. This is a critical time to explore EU-Arab relations, developments in and around the Eastern Mediterranean, and Greece's potential as a business and trade hub for the region that can, of course, encompass North Africa. In that spirit, I conducted an in-depth interview with Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, and we start with how to grow EU-Arab relations. Let's take a listen.
Well, I think, John, there is an increasing understanding within the European Union that we need to play a more active geopolitical role in our part of the world. And of course, when we look at our part of the world in the slightly broader context, we cannot afford not to have a strong partnership relationship with what we call the Arab world in its broadest possible dimension. There are lots of challenges we are facing, and I'm not obviously just talking about COVID, but issues such as migration, which is a very important topic for all European countries, issues of regional development, issues of energy. And we need to establish the proper context in order to be able to address these issues, because these are also issues of priority for the Arab world. And of course, for Greece, this makes that much more sense, given our geographic position on the map and our traditionally strong ties with the Arab world. We are an Eastern Mediterranean country. We're concerned with tension in the Eastern Mediterranean. I'm sure we'll discuss this throughout our topic. So we feel we can be, a natural bridge between what's happening in Europe and what's happening in the broader context of the Arab world.
Well, it's interesting because senior ministers here in the region, specifically the UAE, which you're going to be visiting in the next couple of weeks, have said that Greece can define a very special role as a bridge between the West, i.e. the European Union, and the East or West Asia in the Gulf. How are you defining that on this visit? What do you think you'll get accomplished?
Well, I visited Saudi Arabia and the UAE last February, right before COVID. And especially with the UAE, we've set an ambitious target to significantly improve our bilateral relationship, both on the economic but also on the geopolitical side. And it'll be an opportunity to take stock of the progress that we have made and to establish, to really lay the foundations for what I do consider to be a strategic partnership. We've seen a lot of progress since in terms of significant interest by capital from the UAE to invest in Greece. Greece is becoming a much more attractive investment destination. And frankly, when I visited, I was surprised that we hadn't done more in terms of our relationship with the UAE in the past. And I think that we also look at the world through a relatively similar lens, also regarding what's happening in the Eastern Mediterranean. And in that respect, I have high ambitions regarding this relationship, and I'm sure it will go from strength to strength.
The Abraham Accords here, you have to watch with amazement, because months ago I couldn't even place a phone call from the Gulf to Israel, and now they're signing a series of MOUs. How will this impact the Eastern Mediterranean, for one, and how do you see it playing out for the Palestinians? Does it give peace a better chance sitting at the table and seeing growth and development first and peace thereafter?
Look, as far as the accords themselves, it was a significant step in the right direction, and also a proof that countries that have had long-lasting differences, deep divisions, can actually overcome them and reach peaceful resolution that is to their mutual benefit. And I think also works to promote overall regional peace. As far as the Palestinian issue is concerned, you know the position of the European Union in favor of a two-state solution, and Greece is very much consistent with what the European Union has said in that regard. But because we have a strong relationship as Greece with Israel, we have a strong relationship with the UAE, that of course I think creates more opportunities for a broader regional cooperation between our countries, and this is certainly a topic I'm looking forward to discuss with the leadership of both the UAE but also of Israel.
You mentioned the European Union position on the Palestinians. The Minister of State of Foreign Affairs here, Mr. Gargash, was saying you can't leave an empty seat and expect to advance the cause, and that's why the UAE wanted to go ahead with the Abraham Accord, which was seen as quite a radical initially and seems almost normal today. Do you agree with that strategy by the UAE?
We welcome the Abraham Accords, and I think it is clearly a step in the right direction. And to the extent that it is an agreement, a peace agreement between two countries we consider as allies, because as I told you, we have strong relations both with Israel and the UAE, it is of course a most welcome development.
I wanted to talk to you about the recent attacks both in France and Austria. Heinous attacks, and it relates to the Muslim community. Was migration mismanaged in the European Union in the last 20 years, and some that decide to migrate don't respect the cultural diversity in Europe, nor the religious freedoms? And how do we correct it, if you will, or can you?
First of all, we're all shocked, and there are no words to strong enough to condemn how horrible these attacks are. It would probably be slightly simplistic to tie them to migration, and Europe has been home to millions and millions of Muslims who have been living peacefully in Europe. Of course, there are issues in various countries, not necessarily in Greece, that have to do with integration, but we're not talking about that here. We're talking about horrible terrorist acts perpetrated by very specific actors who seek to challenge the European way of life, and a European way of life that is open, that tolerates freedom of religion, freedom of expression. This is who we are in Europe, and frankly, we are not going to stand idle when we are faced with these types of attacks. But this is not just a question regarding how Europe has dealt with integration of Muslim communities. It would be it's wrong to view it through this lens. Now, as far as Greece is concerned, we have always been a country that has been extremely open and tolerant. We have a small Muslim minority in northeastern Greece that is, I think, relatively well integrated into Greek society, extremely peaceful. And we're doing our best to make sure that we offer equal opportunities to all Greeks, to the overwhelming Christian majority, but also to our small Muslim minority.
10 days ago, we witnessed the full force of Mother Nature with the earthquake that struck Izmir and the island of Samos, and it led to direct talks between yourself and President Erdogan of Turkey. Do you trust this process of resetting with Turkey, and can it last as a result of that catastrophe?
Well, it was very natural for me to call President Erdogan, offer my condolences, and also offer Turkey any help that they might have requested at the time, given that the catastrophe in Turkey was the damages in Turkey and the loss of life was much bigger than what happened in Greece. I think it was a very cordial and friendly telephone call. But frankly, John, we shouldn't be talking just when there is a catastrophic earthquake that sort of reminds us that there are forces of nature that transcend all of us. We have reached out to Turkey repeatedly since I became Prime Minister, and what we've gotten in response was a series of highly provocative activities in terms of challenging our sovereign rights, unilateral exploratory activities between what we consider to be Greek exclusive economic zone. And we've told Turkey something very simple. Let's sit down, talk, discuss, But there needs to be a precondition, and the precondition is that you don't engage in activities that we consider is violating our sovereign rights. And we should discuss what our differences are, and we have one main difference with Turkey, and that is the delimitation of our maritime zones. And if we cannot agree, we should go to the International Court. But unfortunately, and in spite of efforts also made by Germany, because the Chancellor tried to mediate between Greece and Turkey, we haven't seen any real progress. But the European Council has taken a decision and has made it very, very clear that it expects significant progress by December. It will take stock of the issue in December. And if there is no significant progress, there will be consequences for Turkey. And of course, the Turkish economy is not particularly strong these days. So it's really up to Turkey to determine whether it wants a productive relationship with Europe or whether it wants a confrontational relationship with Europe. If it chooses a second path, it should know that there will be consequences for Turkey. Because I think the Europeans have understood that this is not just a difference between Greece and Turkey or Cyprus and Turkey. What's happening in the Eastern Mediterranean affects Europe as a whole. What's happening on the migration front affects Turkey as a whole. When Turkey tried to use migrants and refugees last March as geopolitical pawns to put pressure on Europe, this doesn't just affect Greece, it affects Europe as a whole. So this is no longer a dispute between Greece and Turkey. I think it is a dispute between Europe and Turkey. Turkey should be very much aware of the fact that it's not just about solidarity by Europe to Greece and Cyprus. It's also about the vital strategic interests of the European Union in a part of the world that is crucial for our European interests.
What do you think is his end game here? And I don't want to be too provocative, but I do want to ask, eventually, would you be willing to share energy resources if discovered? Is that a possibility in the future?
Well, this is not something we do discuss, John, because we first need to determine, delimitate our maritime zones in a fair and equitable manner. This is, the number one priority here, and we haven't been able to do so for many decades. But I just want to point out that this government, our government, has signed a delimitation agreement with Italy. We've signed a partial delimitation agreement with Egypt, and we have agreed with Albania to go to the International Court and let the court decide how we want to delimitate our maritime zones. So we have proven that there is a solution to this problem if you stick to international law and good neighborly relations. So really, it's, I think frankly, it's Turkey that doesn't want to play by the rules here. And that continues this constant sort of provocative activity. And as I told you, the deadline has been laid out by the European Council. This is no longer an issue that just affects our bilateral relationship. It affects the overall status of the relationship between Europe as a whole and Turkey.
You know, he has declared, President Erdogan, that he wants to be a net exporter in 5 years. He's made discoveries, as you know, in the Black Sea, but that is impossible for him to be a net exporter without the Eastern Mediterranean. So how do you find a settlement? Only through international mediation then?
Well, I don't see another way but to sit down and agree. And if we agree to disagree, if we cannot find a solution, as I told you, we sat down with Egypt, and after 14 years, we did find a solution. We consider it to be an equitable solution. Both countries took a step back, because that's the way international agreements are done, are reached at the end of the day. But if Turkey doesn't want to play by the rules, it's very difficult to envision a solution that's currently found. But we should also consider the fact that all other countries in the region are cooperating. There is the Eastern Mediterranean Gas Forum. So why is it that all countries cooperate and Turkey is the one country that is the one that is causing problems? Maybe they should give the Turkish leadership some pause for thought. That we're not all after Turkey. We never try to exclude Turkey. I want to be very, very clear with you and your audience. It's Turkey that is almost excluding itself through its behavior, because all other countries have found a way to cooperate. So I think this tells us something about, attitudes towards cooperation and willingness to find acceptable solutions in our part of the world.
Is there strength in numbers, Prime Minister? You have this force of Israel, Egypt, Cyprus, Greece, backing by France, Chancellor Merkel serving as the mediator, the United States indicating its support. Is that a wall you're comfortable with that keeps Greece secure against Turkey?
We have full confidence in ourselves. In our armed forces, we may be a smaller country than Turkey, but we have a very strong deterrent. And that was always the purpose of investing in our armed forces. But I do need to point out, yes, that there is an international alliance being formed that is concerned about Turkey's role. And again, I wouldn't want it to be this way. I'm the last person who would want a Turkey that is actually a disruptor in our neighborhood. I do aspire to have friendly relationships with Turkey. They will always be our neighbor. And I think the ties between our people are strong and go back many centuries. But of course, Turkey has also needs to see the world through the same lens. I do need to point out that there has been a change in U.S. policy also vis-à-vis Turkey. The State Department has been quite strong in its language of condemnation of the Turkish behavior over the past months. So again, everyone seems to agree that Turkey seems to be doing something wrong here. And of course, my job is also to build strong alliances. So this is what I'm doing.
How about the choice that we see for president of the United States? Has Vice President Biden given indications that he'll be an active player in the Eastern Mediterranean and understands the reliance and the viability of the future of NATO? Well,
we're sort of in an awkward position here because we're taping the interview. By the time it'll be played, you probably know who the president is. So allow me not to comment on this until I know who the president is. But what I do want to point out that there is a bipartisan concern in Washington about Turkey's role, and I think this is also shared by the security establishment in Washington. So this is not just about who sits in the White House. It's about what the bureaucracy and the administration thinks is actually happening in our part of the world.
I spoke to a senior intelligence chief from Eastern Europe who told me 2 years ago that the Eastern Mediterranean was the most volatile place, most dangerous place on Earth, and kind of vulnerable to war, if you will. Can conflict be avoided when you have potential natural gas assets at play here that everybody wants a piece of?
Of course, we should be able, because if conflict, God forbid, were to break out, it would be a lose-lose situation eventually for everyone. And that is why, again, I do want to stress that we've found ways to cooperate, and countries in the region have found ways to cooperate. And if I were to return to your initial questions, if Israel is being able to cooperate with countries that were considered sort of quote-unquote mortal enemies, what is it that doesn't allow us to cooperate? 80 years ago, in 1930, 8 years after a devastating war between Greece and Turkey, which ended in 1922. In 1930, the leaders of the two countries signed a peace and friendship agreement. And then, Prime Minister Venizelos actually went to Ankara and signed a peace agreement with Kemal Atatürk. So countries have the way to overcome their differences, as long as they approach international relations not as a zero-sum game. It's never a zero-sum game.
That's an optimistic tone there. I wanted to talk to you about your latest maneuver here on the COVID-19 second wave. You've called for a 3-week lockdown. And I want to know first the initial reaction from Greeks, because they did follow the rules of the government in the last wave. Will you get that same sort of support, or is there fatigue? And also, how do you balance the lockdown with trying to keep the economy moving, Prime Minister? This is crucial at this time.
These are difficult decisions, and everybody wanted to avoid a full lockdown. But I think it's happening more or less everywhere in Europe. And we took the decision probably earlier than other countries. By earlier, I mean when we got the first indications of exponential growth, we took the decision to put the country on lockdown for 3 weeks. We were ahead of the curve in March. We did remarkably well during the first wave. But the second wave has hit us all with much greater strength. And in that respect, what we're doing now was the only solution to make sure that we won't have pressure on our healthcare system, which would at some point cause us real difficulties. But it's the same is happening everywhere. We're still doing better than most European countries, but I had to take the decision now because I knew I probably would be forced to take it at some point. I prefer to do it now, have it for 3 weeks, have it act as a circuit breaker. Hopefully, we'll reopen in December to make sure that we salvage something from the Christmas season. And of course, we've supported the economy. We've pumped a lot of money into the real economy, supporting businesses and especially workers by picking up through furlough schemes, by picking up their wages. The fact that Greece now has a lot of credibility and allows us to borrow on the international capital markets with record low interest rates, as you know, gives us the liquidity cushion to support the real economy, which is what every country, frankly, needs to do in these extraordinary circumstances. And of course, we're also looking at Europe to quickly finalize the details of the Recovery and Resilience Fund. So come 2021, we'll have access to significant European funds to help us restart the economy and have the economy grow again. But I also want to point out that in the midst of the crisis, we've had significant foreign interest for investments in Greece. And I'm not just talking about interest in traditional sectors, such as, for example, hotels and tourism, where we see a lot of interest also from Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi Capital has invested, for example, in fish farms, cutting-edge technology in terms of food supply. Microsoft announced a huge investment in building 3 big data centers in Greece. Volkswagen, a few days ago, signed an MOU with the Greek government to turn one of our islands into a prototype smart mobility island. Really cutting-edge work in technology, in green transformation, in sectors where we think Greece should really take a leadership, and where we also see lots of synergies with the Arab world, especially issues around clean tech, around food security. These are areas where we can do much more in terms of cooperating with capital from the Gulf.
I was going to ask you, in fact, is the COVID-19 pandemic masking what is a very promising window for recovery with some $37 billion earmarked from the EU Recovery Fund? That should give you a good foundation once you get through the second wave. It
will happen, Don. I'm sure that the recovery is going to be very robust. And as soon as we're going to have a vaccine, and I'm confident that we will have good news soon. And as you know, the European Union has signed vaccine deals with all promising companies. What I notice also in Greece is that savings go up. So I think people will be looking to spend once the pandemic is over, and businesses will be looking to invest. And the smart businesses are already investing because they know that the pandemic is going to be over. They know that Greece has a reliable, pro-business, reform-oriented government. They know the opportunities in Greece, so they're eager to place their chips now, even before the pandemic actually comes to an end. That's what smart investors do. They're ahead of the curve.
Well, in fact, we saw Microsoft make a move, Pfizer setting up a research center, Volkswagen working on autonomous vehicles here. You're approaching foreign direct investment in a very different way. So green technology, for example, high-tech startups out of Athens and Thessaloniki.
Yeah, we just had
previous prime ministers.
Yeah, we just had a recent acquisition by a leading American company of our leading Greek high-tech data center. We've had acquisitions of startups in Greece for, these are very significant investments. So there is a high-tech ecosystem that is actually emerging out of Greece. And of course, we have a significant advantage, John. We have so many talented Greeks abroad who are actually looking to return to Greece, provided Greece offers good job opportunities. And in the post-COVID world, there will be winners and losers. I'm convinced about that. I'm pretty sure Greece is going to be on the side of the winners. In an environment where you can work out of anywhere, why not work out of Greece? At a time, Greece is a safe, connected country. We're going to be one of the first countries to launch 5G, one of the first countries to complete our 5G auctions. We're a member of the European Union. We are ideally situated at the crossroads of 3 continents, which is particularly relevant also from people in the Gulf, but also people from Eastern Africa. So I intend to make this a success story. COVID has derailed everyone, but I see the opportunities behind this crisis. And for the first time, we've also been able to mobilize significant European public capital. The European Union is borrowing as a supranational entity to support member states. So, of course, I have to deal with day-to-day crisis, and it is very tiring and very difficult to track this virus that keeps surprising us. But at the same time, I keep my eye on the medium and the long term. We're implementing very meaningful reforms to make sure that once we're done with COVID, the Greek economy is going to take off.
You've mentioned 5G and the concerns that America has, and Europe for that matter, on Chinese technology and data control. Will you follow the European Union line and go with a European company because of those concerns with China and Huawei, for example?
No, first of all, our operators are European companies, so we don't have any Greek operators, and they make the decisions at the end of the day. We will follow, I'd say, the European path, and you'd expect us to follow the European mainstream on this issue. But we're going to be one of the first countries to launch 5G. We've also been rather innovative. We will use part of the proceeds from 5G to set up a specific equity fund that will co-invest in 5G applications, so we don't sort of pump everything into the public budget, because we see the potential of Greece as a country that can play its own role in the high-tech ecosystem.
You know, there was a lot of concern when Costco came into Piraeus, and I actually covered the story 3 years ago, and perhaps using Greece or Italy, where it has a large presence, as Trojan horses into the European Union. What's the Greek experience? Because there's been a lot of Greek local hires, better than 1,500. Do you have the paranoia that the U.S. has about this foothold into Europe?
Frankly, no. It's been a good deal for Costco. It's been a good deal for Greece. And there are issues, and we've also agreed with Costco that they're slightly behind schedule in terms of delivering some of the investments that they were supposed to do in the port, but I'm sure we'll resolve this issue. Piraeus has been transformed into a very successful port. We've made it very clear we want to make it the largest port in the Mediterranean. It's a natural entry point for goods into the eastern and central Mediterranean. We want to turn Greece into a logistics hub. You can't argue with geography. It will always take 8 or 9 days less for ships from the Gulf or from the east, from East Asia to reach Europe. So I'm not willing to give up this opportunity for the country. And John, nobody's going to take the port away and leave with it. So it's a long-term concession agreement. This is what we've signed, and we see this as a win-win project.
A pet project I was always thinking about for Greece is being the financial hub of the Mediterranean, which could take in North Africa, and it never was done by previous governments. Do you see potential here to exploit the geographic position and this market on its own?
I can tell you that even post-Brexit, we see interest for from financial institutions to set up a presence in Greece, and we're offering them enough incentives to be able to actually do that. So Greece should also be a financial center for the broader region. And again, I place particular emphasis on the fact that Greece combines a safe, connected, and geographically appealing location because of what we are, because it takes 4 hours to fly to Abu Dhabi, whereas it would take 8 hours to fly from London to Abu Dhabi, with the fact that we offer a fantastic quality of life, and I think these issues are becoming increasingly important. And we've proven by dealing with the COVID epidemic that we are a safe country. Healthcare, by the way, is an area we're investing a lot. Why shouldn't Greece be a regional healthcare center for the broader region? We have a booming pharmaceuticals industry, but we should also be much more active in healthcare services. We can be incredibly competitive to attract customers, not just from the Gulf, but also from the rest of Europe.
One final question for you, Prime Minister. What did you learn through the experience of that gradual opening in the summer to allow visitors to come in, measured, mainly Europeans, over time? And what will you apply to the next summer, having faced down COVID and not knowing when vaccines roll out?
Look, we opened up to tourism by taking all the precautions. We had extremely limited transmission from visitors into the country. We were very sophisticated in terms of who we tested. We used very sophisticated algorithms in terms of who we actually tested. So we actually were innovative in terms of big data and machine learning solutions in addressing the testing problem. The second wave of the epidemic essentially hit us after we finished with our tourism season, so there was no correlation between what we did. But hopefully by next summer, the root cause of the problem will have been addressed, because otherwise there will be reluctance from people to travel. We'll be smarter by then. There'll be more testing. We'll be even smarter in terms of how we handle the problem. But we need to address the root cause, and the root cause of the problem is only going to be significant and very quick vaccination of the European population, so that they can actually travel safely. And I do hope that if the news from the companies are successful, that by spring or by summer, people will be able to travel safely. We've done all the preparatory work in terms of our supply chains and making sure that once we get the vaccines, we will vaccinate our populations very quickly. We're very quick in terms of vaccinating. We'll be vaccinating almost half of the Greek population against the flu. There is no anti-vaccination movement in Greece, thank God. People were actually quite eager to get vaccinated against the flu, and I'm sure the same will happen with COVID. I told people I'll be the first to do the COVID vaccine, not because I want to be the first to be protected, but because we need to send a signal that if the vaccines are actually approved by the companies, that they're definitely safe and effective.
I appreciate all the time, and it's great to have you for the EU Arab Forum and also for our on-air work. It's great to have you. It was terrific.
Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Excellent.
Take care.